Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening.
Continuing our investigation of the Gateless Barrier, Case 14, Nanchuan kills the cat. The priest Nanchuan found monks of the eastern and western halls arguing about a cat. He held up the cat and said, "Everyone, if you can say something, I will spare this cat. If you can't say anything, I will cut off its head." No one could say a word, so Nanchuan cut the cat in two. That evening, Zhaozu returned from outside and Nanchuan told him what happened. Zhaozu removed a sandal from his foot, put it on his head, and walked out. Nanchuan said, "If you had been there, the cat would have been spared." Wumen says, "Tell me, what is the meaning of Zhaozu putting his straw sandal on his head? If you can give a turning word here, you will see that Nanchuan's challenge was not irresponsible. But if you cannot yet do this, danger." Wumen's verse says, if Zhaozu had been there, he would have taken charge. He would have snatched away the sword and Nanchuan would have begged for his life. Okay. Okay, so get comfortable. This case 14, Nanchuan kills the cat. It's one of the most well-known and least understood cases in the Gateless Barrier, the Wumenguan. I wasn't actually going to talk about the koans today. I wasn't going to continue. But just in the Kinhin, just as I was getting ready to give a talk, I thought, oh, well, I might as well just see what it is. And it was Nanchuan kills the cat. So I thought, oh, yeah, okay, I'll talk about that one. It's particularly... It's particularly interesting, I think, because we've got this new puppy in the house. And certainly leading up to the bringing this Mr. Carson home, there was some arguments between the monks of the eastern and western halls. Yeah, that's all, if you can't guess that one. One of the things that I never see addressed in commentaries or teisho about this koan is this monks of the eastern and western halls. People always talk about, oh, it was a really big monastery and so they had two different halls and there was just two different factions of monks that were arguing about this cat. They were having some religious argument maybe, or discussing and disputing and debating about the nature of the cat. That's always how it's portrayed in the commentary. But even small monasteries have Eastern and Western halls. And it actually doesn't refer to any vacuous, huge number of monks. It refers to the function of the monastics in the monastery environment. So this Nanchuan and Joshu, they were around, I think around 700 was about the time that they were around. And at this time, there was no non-profit society or charitable organization. There were no boards of directors or anything like that. So all of the governance and administration of a monastery was done by monks. The bookkeeper was a monk, and the accountant was a monk, and the cook was a monk, and the teacher was a monk. They were all monks. And they all rotated in and out of different functions in the monastery. And just like we have today, just like we do in any organization, if you've got a person who's really good at keeping the books, they kind of move into the bookkeeping position. Fusu, it's called in Japanese, is the sort of accounts manager, the bookkeeper. And so what happens in a monastery is that you get two halls based on their function in the monastery, when they've got to come and go in services and things like that. It's organized so that the comings and goings of monks don't disturb everybody else. So one hall, I can't remember off the top of my head, the Eastern or Western hall. One hall is primarily administrative monks. They're managers, administrators, they're your board chair and your treasurer and your secretary, scribe. All of those kinds of functions are in one hall. And then in the other hall, you've got all of your trainers. So you've got your jiki and your joko and your shoji and your ino and all those kinds of people. They're all in another hall. In our own community, there are these kinds of divisions in the community. A few Sundays ago, I talked about having these new Sundays where it's an opportunity for a little bit of sitting, a little bit of discussion. And we also have Sangha Sundays where, we have a short period of sitting, 3 30-minute periods of sitting, and then we have some time for coffee and snacks and socialize and getting to know one another, just being with one another. And every time that there's a change like this, I get feedback from the community. And it's always, for me, I feel a wonderful affirmation for me that I get feedback. And I get feedback from both halls. In this case, for example, I get people who say, "Oh, this is so great. It's always so great to have an opportunity to just have a shorter morning so I can get back to my family and it's not such a big hole punched in my day, and how wonderful that you're making this available." And then I also have a group of people who say, "This sucks. We want to sit more. Why do we always have to sacrifice our sitting so that people can talk more? Don't they have enough time, and can't they get together on their own free time and do that?" Likewise, between the administrative, the practical, the functional aspect of the Zen Center, keeping the doors open, paying the bills and all that kind of stuff, and wanting to do more and more practice. We have these kinds of arguments. Although they're not heated so much, they're balanced conversations and assessments between how do we go about continuing to generate the funds that we need to continue this operation versus a practice body that just wants to do more and different varieties and all these kinds of things. There's always this dynamic tension. one of my teachers used to talk about these two activities, the activity of plus and the activity of minus, the activity of birth and the activity of death. He would even refer to it as the activity of male and female, but we don't do that anymore because it was too misleading. It's based on an idea of a male and female that is too limited, I think. But we can talk about this in terms of manifestation or embodiment and dissolution, emptying out. Nagarjuna, one of our ancestors, one of the sort of, he was called the second Buddha, used this example. He called it the two truths, the sort of absolute and the relative. Whenever we're engaged in our practice, we, in life generally, we're always pitching ourselves or leaning ourselves towards one or the other, generally. When people start coming to practice, a lot of the time it's out of a sort of sickness or a frustration with relative reality, what we call relative reality. It's relative reality is where we do all of our living. It's where we make our relationships. It's where we pursue our goals. It's where we buy our food and take our dumps in the bathroom, and all that kind of stuff happens in relative reality. It's full of limitations and frustrations and barriers and self and subject and other and object, and we're always bumping into things in the relative world. And I think that a lot of people come to practice out of a sense of frustration that there's got to be something more to life than this relative experience. And there is. And when we come to practice, we start to develop this meditation, zazen, which is immersion or dissolution in the absolute, right? So emptying out the relative and experiencing, dissolving into the absolute, shunyata, emptiness. But one of the things that happens when we do that is that we start to dismiss the relative. We start to say all of that material stuff and all of our relationships and concerns about wars and diseases and the environment and all that stuff, it doesn't matter because there is this absolute. And from the perspective of Zen, sometimes it's important to kind of go through this phase a little bit. Emptiness, sickness it's called sometimes, where we get lopsided towards the absolute or towards the emptiness side. But in the end, when we do this, we also just become a ghost. This is where our friends and our family members and the people who care about us, our teachers, our community members start to worry about us because we have slanted too far the other way. And in the end, it's exactly the same. You've traded, one for the other. You've traded fixation on the relative for fixation on the absolute. And there's more to it than that. So our practice as we go forward, and as this teaching in our tradition goes, it is the manifestation of plus and minus. We say that in the dedication all the time. The infinite manifestation of plus and minus, of relative and absolute, not one after the other, or not sequentially, or not one standing on top of the other, one coming before and the other after, but that these two experiences, plus and minus, absolute and relative, are happening simultaneously, arising and dissolving, the interplay, this dance, relative and absolute, simultaneously arising. Now, I've never seen this described like this in any kind of commentary about this case, but I think that for Eshu's students, that the way that we can go about this is that this is exactly what is taking place here. We've got the monks of the Eastern and Western Hall. We've got administrators. We've got the practitioners. Now, this is a discussion that comes up in our own Zen Center all the time, in board meetings and in strategic planning. Who's doing real practice? Who's doing real Zen practice? Is it the people who are concerned about the finances of the Zen Center? Is it the people who are concerned about making the Zen Center accessible to more of our members? Or is it the people who just want to sit and engage in intensive practice and do zazen and sanzen with the teacher and listen to teishos and awaken? Is it the people who want to do gardening, or who want to apply their practice through their jobs as teachers or parents? Or is it the people who want to shave their heads and become monastics and engage in this practice all the time? Who's doing real practice? Who is it? One of our core values is commitment. So who is it who is really committed? Which of those two? And if one of you can give a word, I won't kill the dog. Oh, I'm really happy you're here. Yes. So, always our mind wants to cut things in half, and always our mind wants it to be this or that, and always we want to have something that's fixed and solid that we can know for certain. Always we want to be on the right side. Our perspective of what's committed practice, and our perspective of what's right practice and true practice and genuine practice. We want to be on the right side of that. If we think, yes, I want to sit, I want to engage and commit my life, turn over my life to the formal practice of this Dharma. I want to support the communal aspects of this and make it always available through my being here, through my example of practice. This is true practice. Or if we sit and we think the genuine manifestation of Zen practice is to take this wisdom and this compassion out into the world, what better use of this teaching of wisdom and compassion can there be than to raise children with wisdom and compassion, to interact with the world in ways that diminish suffering, that create opportunities for awakening. Those people who just want to sit in the zendo, navel-gazing, doing nothing for the world, that's a mistake. I am the one who's committed. I am the one who's dedicated. I am the one who's practicing the true Dharma. Which of these is right? These are the debates that come up between the Eastern and the Western hall, and have since the time of the Buddha, since the time of Nanchuan and Zaozu. I was thinking as I was reading it this morning, what's with Zaozu and pets? You know, the first case in the Wumenguan, or the gateless barrier, is a monk asked Zaozu about a dog or a puppy. Does the dog have a Buddha nature? And here's Nanchuan in this deal with the cat. I like Zaozu. So one of the things that is often talked about is does Nanchuan really kill the cat? And you can spend a lot of time debating about this. Some people say, yes, and things were much more rough and tumble then, and monks weren't so sentimental, and it was a different time, and it was in China, so they didn't anthropomorphize animals, and so it wasn't a big deal to kill a cat and all this. And there's other people who say that's absolutely ridiculous, because at the time Zen monks were often trained in the Vinaya school, so for Nanchuan to have killed a cat would have been a huge deal. Not to mention that the monks in China at this time were fairly strictly vegetarians. There was no killing of animals. But we can't, who can know? But what's important is what he is talking about. He's talking about a life, a single life. And what he's talking about is that we have these two aspects trying to win. And it's not just an external manifestation of these two aspects. It's not just two actual groups of monks who are debating. Which is it? Is it the absolute perspective, dissolution, minus zero, emptiness, shunyata? Or is it the manifestation plus activity, engagement? Which one is right? But this is the debate. This is the challenge, the question that each of us as practitioners has all the time in our practice. Each and every interaction and transaction in our life, is this the time to manifest clearly? Or is this the time to receive, to dissolve and unify with? And as we go forward in our practice, a lot of the time we're working from our heads, and we're working from the teachings that we've heard, or the things that we've read, or the things that we've seen being said or done in Zen circles. And so whenever we're doing this, as a dynamic situation arises, we're really doing our best. We're really doing our best to hit it well. Sometimes we think, I need to act here. And sometimes we think, I need to just breathe and embrace this thing here. But what's important is that we don't get stuck. We don't get stuck into one mode of operation, or one mode of engaging our practice, one mode of perceiving a circumstance or an experience in our life. Just as I said early on, when we come to practice, we say, there's much more to this than just the relative. But also, there's much more to this than just the absolute. That's a big statement. We can't get trapped in one or the other. We have as our capacity the limitless manifestation of both the relative and the absolute. A circumstance arises, but we have just one life. We have this cat. Nanchuan brings this up. Between these two opposing polarities, plus and minus, the Eastern Hall and the Western Hall, you need to do something because there's just one life. And if you can say something, if you can say a complete word from either of these camps, the cat lives. But if you can't, I'm going to cut off its head. Can you do it? Stuck in your Eastern Hall, stuck in your Western Hall, can you manifest as a complete being, as a complete activity, as a complete word, even a single word? The Koan says that no one could say a word. How could they? Fixated in one position or the other position, any position, thinking this is the way to practice, or thinking this is the way to manifest, or I must be kind and gentle at all times, or I must always have a smile and breathe, or I must strike quickly. Thinking any of these things catches you, catches your tongue, and you watch as Nanchuan, your life, the cat's life, is exterminated. That evening, Zhaozu returns from outside. He'd maybe been out begging in the village. And Nanchuan tells him what happened. And usually, as we know with these old Zen teachers, he doesn't just tell him. He explains the whole situation. So that not only does the interaction happen once for the people who are engaged in the argument, but Nanchuan's primary disciple is Zhaozu, or Joshu in Japanese. So when Nanchuan comes back, or Zhaozu comes back, Nanchuan catches him and says, okay, what would you have done if you had been there? What do you say? What do you do? How do you respond to this desperate plea for life? And Zhaozu removed a sandal from his foot, put it on his head, and walked out. Doshu claps, and the fool tries to understand what it means when Zhaozu puts his sandal on his head. Immediately we start to try to break down. Maybe it means he's turning things upside down. Instead of on his feet, he's putting it on his head. Oh, maybe. But as soon as we enter into that sort of analytical understanding, trying to figure out what it is that Joshu's doing, our reasoning for that is to imitate. Our reasoning for that is to find the thing the right way. Again, cutting things in half. If that was to happen to me, I need to understand why Joshu did the things that he did in order to I can know what that I should do. But Joshu didn't look around. He didn't ask, what did the monks from the East and West Hall do? He responded. Asked the same question, perhaps Rinzai might have shouted. Another teacher might have hit with a stick, flipped over a table, waggled his sleeves and turned around. It can't be play acting. It can't be copycatting. It can't be running a script. It has to be completely connected with both the East and West halls, both plus and minus, both the relative and the absolute. Nanchuan said, if you had been there, the cat would have been spared. Wumen says, tell me, what is the meaning of Zhao Zu putting his straw sandal on his head? Wumen is a devil. As I say over and over again, he tells jokes and he is sarcastic and ironic. And when we're already half caught, he'll push us even further into the glue pot. So this question, this pointer, is like it's like Lucy holding the football. He says after this whole case, he says, so tell me, what is the meaning of Zhao Zu putting his straw sandal on his head? Kick it. If you give a turning word here, you will see that Nanchuan's challenge was not irresponsible. It's not irresponsible. The demonstration using this cat each of us, I don't know, maybe some of us don't like cats, so they don't get this koan and all. What's the problem? We killed the cat. Great! No, if we give rise to recognition of life, then the life of the cat or the life of a dog or the life of a human being or our own life is all one. And this is what's being pointed to here. When we divide, when we cut into, our life is lost. What Nanchuan is doing in this case is pointing to the fundamental aspect of our practice which we must all keep in mind, that it is not this or that. It's not relative or absolute. It's not plus or minus. Our practice is not about the forms and rituals and structures and all of that. But it's also not about the marketing and the bookkeeping and all of that. It's both. We have to have as our capacity both of these things. That's not right. Already it is our capacity for both of these things. Both of these things are our capacity. But when we start to say, this is true, this is right, this is the better way, we ourselves cut ourselves in two. We ourselves decapitate ourselves. We ourselves limit our own innate capacity. Nanchuan's challenge is not irresponsible because he is using a dynamic example to point out a fundamental truth to individuals who are completely wrapped up in their self-concerns, in their own perspective, in half of the activity. So it's like he's trying to break them out. If you cannot yet do this, if you cannot yet break outside of your own subjective perspective of right and wrong, true practice, danger. You are the cat. You are the cat. And the very experiences and relationships and efforts of your life will cut you in half over and over again. If Zhao Zu had been there, he would have taken charge. He would have snatched away the sword, and Nanchuan would have begged for his life. And maybe Nanchuan would have been happy to do it. Happy, I think, because even just one student who can grasp this would make him deeply happy. Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.